On 10th of March, as we know, Saudi Arabia and Iran sent their representatives to Beijing for an agreement to restore diplomatic relations. The deal was formally signed in April. The initial team was those of security experts representing security agencies. And later on, it was raised to the diplomatic level when the two foreign ministers met and signed the agreement. Now the question is, why China? Why not anybody else? A lot of spade work had been done by Iraq and Oman. In my opinion, the year 2021 is very significant in the Middle East interstate relations. That is the year when we saw Saudi-Qatari Rapprochement. That is the Al-Ula summit when the possibility of Iran-Saudi Rapprochement was formally discussed. And Saudi Arabia responded positively. Signals were sent to, because the talks had already started in Baghdad. Iran also responded positively. The reasons, in my opinion, are that there was a stalemate in Yemen. Saudi Arabia was feeling a war fatigue. Iran had been hit hard by the economic sanctions. It wanted to normalize relations and trade with its neighbors. So the vibes, both in Baghdad and in Oman, Muscat, were positive. The reason why the deal was not concluded in Baghdad or in Oman were very simple. For a mediator, there are certain conditions that should be met. First is an impression of total neutrality. That perception was perhaps there, but not as much as China enjoyed it. Because I've served in Oman. Oman has had long reservations about Saudi hegemonic role in the Gulf. Similarly, Iraq, after the exit of the United States, was also seen leaning towards Iran. And more importantly, you go to a mediating country which also has the strength to enforce the agreement. Both these countries were not strong enough to enforce the agreements. I said the first criteria is neutrality, so US was obviously out, not acceptable to Iran. Russia was too entangled in Ukraine war. and also leaning towards Iran. So China sees this opportunity. As against the general impression that China had been working hard to achieve this position, my findings are that China actually plucked a low-hanging fruit because a lot of work had already been done, spade work had been done in Baghdad and Oman. So the deal was signed, and it took many people by surprise. This was at that time seen as a diplomatic coup. China had certainly emerged on the world scene as a peacemaker. And it was in stark contrast to what the United States has been doing over the decades. China displayed to the world that whereas you, the biggest power, wage wars to bring democracy and peace, we have opted for peace first. As they say, China prefers to enter the outer world through trade, economic deals, civilian deals, technology, and it does not enter militarily. So that was the background. Another significant thing to note is that this was yet, we have seen the trend in the recent years that geoeconomics is becoming stronger. So this was another achievement of geoeconomics over geopolitics. China proved that it could clinch a major deal on its economic strength because, as we all know, for both Saudi Arabia as well as for Iran, China is the foremost trading partner. So the political landscape, the geopolitical landscape in the Middle East has undergone a change because of this development. I would like to share another positive angle to this development, which I have felt for a long time. Our neighbor, India, has held long time ambitions to be the policeman of the Gulf, either unilaterally or in cahoots with other regional powers. They then later on came to realize that India could not do it unilaterally. So the security plan, I was in a conference in Riyadh end of 2014, and Yemen had starting to boil. It was on a boiling point. Sana'a had been overrun by the Houthis. The war looked very close. So there was a conference in Riyadh about the Gulf security. Mr. Jaspal had gone from the Quaid-e-Azam University. Um, so over there, the Indian delegate or person invited, he was a former ambassador, and he gave the Indian view as to how the security in the Gulf should be managed from now onwards. And in fact, that was the Indian plan. He said it should be managed collectively by the GCC states, Iran, Israel, and India. So that was the Indian plan. Now with this development, I think that ambition, the Indian ambition has receded. So that is one positive from this thing. The second positive is that Pakistan, while dealing with its great friend Saudi Arabia, does not have to look over its shoulder towards Iran before taking any initiative. So we can deal with both with equal confidence. That is another positive thing. So this is a win-win deal, a welcome deal as far as Pakistan is concerned. Now I'll come to the three questions that you posed towards the end, or 3 points. I'm sure the other panelists will also, throw light on those. The first is about the significance of this deal and the current competition between the big powers, particularly China and US, in the Middle East. Now, it will be wrong to say that the United States will be out of the Middle East tomorrow. I don't see it happening even in the next few years. I don't see it happening in the short run, and the definition of short run is 5 years. I would not even say that US will be out in 10 years. Why? Because the US and the Western countries still have, although they have pivoted to the South China Sea and they are very busy trying to help Ukraine, but still they have vital interests in the Middle East. The first and foremost interest is securing the sea lanes of energy resources that are exported from this region to the West. The second is the security of Israel, and third aspect is the presence or the perceived presence of Al-Qaeda and IS in these countries, that is, combating terrorism. And the fourth interest that came to my mind was, of course, the defense deals and the sale of equipment, whether civilian or military, to these countries. If you remember, soon after this deal was announced in Beijing, US, the Saudis, placed a huge order of 73 commercial aircraft to the Boeing company in the United States. And recently, the US Foreign Minister, Tony Blinken, was in Saudi Arabia trying to mend fences. And the Saudi Foreign Minister, Prince Faisal bin Farhan, told him that as we have very good trade with China, and as China develops, the trade will increase. Secondly, he said we have very good security relationship with the United States, which is evolving on a daily basis. So, my take is that the Gulf countries and the Middle East at large will keep good relations with both. They would leverage the interpower rivalry to their advantage. And the Saudi Foreign Minister also said in the same meeting that we will not be part of international groupings or rivalries. So that is the significance, and we can discuss other aspects in Q&A. Thank you very much.